Episode 57, ultra-endurance swimmer and environmental activist Ben Lecomte. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Ben Lecomte. Ben is an ultra-endurance swimmer and the first person to complete a cross-Atlantic ocean swim without a kickboard. He has also swum through the Great Pacific Garbage Patch to raise awareness for sustainability and the impact of plastic pollution. He was named one of the world's 50 most adventurous open water swimmers in 2019 by the World Open Water Swimming Association. Ben, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
So Ben, you grew up in Paris and were drawn to water sports at a young age, as I understand it. But Paris isn't exactly a beach town. So how does that happen?
Yeah, that's true. Fortunately, I had parents who exposed us, because I have two brothers, to many things. And we did that especially during our vacation, the summer or the winter. But in the vacation, during our vacation, we spent a lot of time by the beach. And so that's when I first spend my time by the water or in the water when I was very young, when we spent time in the south part of France on the west coast, on the Atlantic side. And my father taught me how to swim in the Atlantic. And from that day on, I was very connected. I felt very connected to the ocean.
If you look back to your childhood, outside of that experience of doing a lot of water activities, any kind of formative experience that you recall that maybe helped shape some of your thinking, your values, your aspirations in life?
I think my parents would be a big influence in that. And the fact that they understood that as kids, you don't know exactly what you want in life and who you will become, but it is important to be exposed to as many things as possible to make your own decision and to test yourself. And my parents, when we wanted to do and start an activity or go somewhere, they never said no. They always pushed us and helped us experience everything that we could experience. And for that, I have great respect and thanks for them, because I think that's how I found what I really wanted to do, because they always helped me in pursuing my interest.
Hmm. So I'm curious, water sports are fun. I'm thinking of jet skiing and maybe sailing and windsurfing. But, long distance swimming is such a unique and rare endeavor. Do you recall what initially drew you to it? What was the allure? It's not something you hear every day.
Right. It didn't start like one day I woke up and I said, well, I'm going to do long distance swimming. No, I felt very close to the environment. So I did a lot of windsurfing, did a lot of water skiing. So I was doing a lot of activities in the water or on the water. But what inspired me and helped me find my way, it's a person who rowed across the Atlantic, and then after he rowed across the Pacific in a small rowboat. And at the time, I liked already swimming, I liked the environment, and I liked the adventure. So to see that really give me kind of the idea and put something in my brain. Well, if a person can row alone in a small boat across the ocean, maybe a swimmer can swim across an ocean if you have the right support team. And it's how the idea came up. But I was always very interested in the adventure side of many different sports, like racing, running, or even car racing across Africa. I was very drawn to the adventure.
I want to sort of jump forward to the first really big endurance swim that you did. It was swimming across the Atlantic Ocean back in 1998. And I believe you're the first person to ever do so, at least without the use of a kickboard. You swam over 3,500 miles from, I believe, from Massachusetts to Quiberon, France. And the journey would take you 73 days, swimming upwards of 10 hours a day, fighting off sharks and battling 20-foot swells in the process. Tell me about this journey.
Yeah, so that's my first big swim. Before that, I had done a few other swim, like 24 non-stop swim, and I tested my limits, and also I trained for many, many weeks, swimming around 6 to 8 hours a day. So I know that physically I was ready to take on a big swim. What I found out during that expedition is that it's mind over matter. So that expedition was very difficult because that was the first time I found myself in that type of situation, being in the middle of the ocean, being in a hostile environment. You have limited stimulus also during those 8 hours that you're in the water. It's very limited. So your mind needs to be strong and much more than your body. So I found it very difficult because I didn't have the right mindset, and I was fighting the situation and fighting the elements and fighting myself throughout. So I didn't really get a lot of pleasure from doing it. I was always thinking about the end, going to the end and the end and the end. So it was very, very difficult. But at the same time, for me, it was very important because it helped me find exactly the right state of mind I needed to have in those type of situation. So it was a big discovery for me.
So in other words, you had done mostly the physical training and preparation, but not necessarily the mental part of this.
Yes, exactly. And I tried to prepare mentally, but nothing prepares you to those type of situation. The real preparation starts once you are in the expedition and you are living it. And that was very true for me.
And so I want to peel that back a little bit, knowing how important this, mind over matter is the mental part that you're pushing your body so hard it feels like it's going to collapse, and how do you keep going, that type of thing? Or is it more just knowing the duration that you're going to be doing this day in, day out for over 2 months? Is it things that are frightening in the water? Walk me through what it was that you had to overcome, and then how did you go about making that adjustment?
Yeah, it's not one thing. If it was only one problem, then you can isolate and find a solution, or realize that the problem, you don't have control over it. So you just isolate yourself from that problem. But it was the accumulation. The fact that physically it's very taxing on your body. It's very painful also. And then when you're underwater, you don't have any stimulus around you. You see and you look at the same blue background. You have the same noise of the water going by your ears. You have the same feel on your hand of the water rushing. I was wearing a wetsuit, so very limited sensation on the body. Mm-hmm. And the taste, it's that salty taste, disgusting taste that I had in the mouth all the time. So it's all I had was my mind to try to make me and transport me into another world. And then after that 8 hours of swim, you go onto a boat. It's not very comfortable to be on a boat. It's rocking. You have limited space, limited accommodation. So all that together makes it very difficult. And you have to first process the information, but you have to isolate what you can control and what you cannot control. And after, have a different mindset that allows you to, even in the worst situation, feel comfortable about it, because mentally you feel comfortable, and isolate and dissociate your mind from your body. That's what I had to learn how to do. My body was there, my body was in pain, my body had to perform, but my mind was in a total different world.
You hear this term flow state, where you just you're so immersed in an activity, you just lose track of yourself, you lose track of time. Is that what you're referring to, or are you actually trying to, focus your mind on something else to remove yourself from what you're doing? Like, was there a specific exercise that you went through to distract yourself, if you will?
you have to prepare yourself before going in the water every day. So I had a schedule of what I was going to think throughout the day, hours by hours. I had a subject that I was going to focus on. And after you use technique, because the idea is to dissociate your mind from your body. So your body is going to be in autopilot, swimming and doing its own thing. And your mind is going to be in a different world. It's going to relive a moment that you had with family or with friends on land. Or you are going to imagine that you are in a country or in a city that you have never been and live that moment. You make your own movie. So that was what I had to do throughout the day.
Any particular scary moments during that journey?
Yeah, of course. Each time you have a shark coming and circling you, your heart is going to race quite a bit. That particular case, that was interesting because the shark came 5 days in a row. It was there circling me and around me for 5 days.
What kind of shark, do you know?
It was a blue shark, about 8-9 foot long, so a nice size. And it was pretty close. And every morning, before going in the water, putting on my wetsuit and my equipment on deck, the fin was circling the boat. And as soon as I got out of the water every evening, the fin was popping back on the surface of the water too.
Was there anything you were doing to repel the sharks? I mean, clearly, I mean, it was circling for 5 days, but it didn't attack you or anything. So why do you suspect that was?
The first night that we saw the fin around, we weren't using any device at all. And that happened the second week, I think. So I had been swimming without any device. So when we saw that fin, we said, okay, next day we are going to put a little device that create a magnetic field in the water and repel sharks. So that's what we did. And the shark just stay at bay for those 4 days. The fifth day, I was seeing the shape of the shark coming closer and closer. So I decided to stop swimming for that day on the fifth day.
So it took you 5 days to come to the conclusion maybe you should exit the water.
Well, no, because during all that time, I never saw it in the water. Just in the morning and in the evening, we saw the fin circling the boat. But on the fifth day, I think it was getting, comfortable even with that magnetic field. It came very close and closer. But, after I realized, and especially that is especially true from the swim that I did in the Pacific, that sea life is very curious. I've had other sharks coming in the Pacific and much closer and being there, but just out of curiosity, they check around what it is, and then after they go on their own way.
And how about the ocean itself? The waves, the swells, the currents, the winds. I imagine just the sheer physicality of it all must be exhausting.
Yeah, I like to be in the water more than to be on the boat when you have big waves and very difficult conditions. When you're on the water or in the water, you are like a little cork. So you go up and down, there is no much things happening. When you're on a boat, you are being tossed around and it's very uncomfortable. So for me, being in the water is the best situation, and I never get seasick when I'm in the water.
But the up and down of the waves, that doesn't throw your rhythm off?
No, I mean, sometimes it's much more difficult, of course, but when you have big waves that are going in the right direction, you do amazing surfs on the waves. The big waves are not too much the problem. The problem is shorter waves and smaller waves that will come and against you and crash against you. They toss you around, but big waves, you are going to go up and down, up and down.
How about the food that you eat? Because I can't even imagine the calories you're burning.
Yeah, so I ate about 8,000 calories per day. And unfortunately, you cannot have fresh food. So everything was in can or rice or pasta. It's all about quantity and a lot of fat and protein that I was eating, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Are you eating while you're in the water or just beforehand and afterwards?
Yeah, so once I got in the water, then I stay in the water for, let's say, 8 hours. I take a break every hour or so to eat some soup and some bread. and that's all. Because when you swim, it's difficult to digest. You cannot had a full meal and feel good about swimming. So I didn't eat a lot when I was swimming, just those break, and I was eating my bread and my soup. That was very easy for me, and that took me a while to find exactly what I could take that will give me some calorie without making me sick. You know, a lot of swimmers struggle with that, finding the right food when you swim to keep on going. So it took me a while to find the right food. I had to have bread, as you know, they were baking bread on board, so it was perfect. And soup warm, something warm was great. So during the day, you know, I cannot eat that much. So knowing that I have to take about 8,000 calories, most of it was what I was on the boat. So in the evening, I take a big meal, and then the big meal that I take, it's basically my lunch, and then I go and sleep for maybe an hour and come back, take another big meal, which would be my dinner, and then go to bed and sleep through the night. But at night I wake up because I'm hungry, so I go eat at night, and then the next morning when I wake up, I will start with a big breakfast.
And how about staying hydrated?
With the soup, it's enough for me.
Okay. Because I assume the salt water is not going to cut it. As I understand it, Ben, you did this swim in honor of your father, who at the time had been recently diagnosed with cancer. Was his sickness some of the fuel that you needed to push yourself throughout this journey?
So I had the idea of swimming across the Atlantic before he passed away. But the fact that he passed away, and that he passed away at a young age, he was 49 when he passed away, that gave me the kick in the butt to just go after what I really wanted to do, and to go after my dream, no matter how big the dream was and crazy it was, because you don't know what could happen, or I don't want to live with regrets and to think about, I could have do that, but I didn't do it. So that's really something that fueled me, and that I kept with me throughout the swim, and to do it in honor of him, and to raise awareness and fund for cancer research, I think was the bigger purpose that helped me go through difficult times.
When you finally, after more than 2 months, touched sand, and you did it, you accomplished what you set out to do. Did it feel the way you thought it was going to feel? Was it better? Was it anticlimactic? How was that actually finishing the journey?
Yeah, everything is surreal, because something that you have thought about for so long and built up a certain image, and when it happens, it's a little different than what you thought about. And what happened also is that everything is new. You have been deprived of the smell, for example. It smells totally different when you go and come to land. You are going to have the exhaust of the car. You are going to have the trees. You are going to have the smell of the city and all that. So all that comes at once with the people that you haven't seen for a while. And the fact that you are on land and you are not moving anymore. I mean, you have so many things that happen at once that it's too much for your brain to process everything. It feels totally surreal. So you have to pinch yourself, say, okay, is that really happening? Is that how it's supposed to be? Is that yeah, it's hard to process everything.
So let's fast forward. 20 years later, at the age of 51, you attempted to swim, I believe, about 5,500 miles across the Pacific from Japan to California, but had to abandon the swim after about 1,700 miles, I believe over 165 days, due to damage to the sail on the boat that was accompanying you on the journey. I have to imagine that it must have been incredibly deflating to have to stop your journey, not because you hit a wall physically or mentally, but simply because the boat broke down.
Yes, that was a difficult moment, but I realized that, and that I realized before that for me, it's not too much, even though it is very important. The goal, personal goal of swimming across an ocean, and a goal that I put myself and I was going after, that was very important. But what became more important is the reason and the motivation behind it. And the motivation behind that swim, it was to raise awareness about the state of the ocean and plastic pollution, and to get data about different subject on science and different subject about pollution in the ocean. So that part became much more important to me. And I realized that when I had to stop because the boat had some issue and broke down the sail and we couldn't pursue it, we could still do our mission of raising awareness and collecting our data, even though I couldn't be swimming anymore.
I'm just curious. It was 20 years removed since your Atlantic swim, but based on memory, any difference swimming the Atlantic versus swimming the Pacific?
The big difference is that I was older, and that worked in my favor, because when you do something that is extreme into the distance or the time and all that, age works in your favor. As you are aging, you become more endurant for everything that is more extreme, right? Because my pace is not that high. I don't go that fast. It's repetitive and all that. So heart rate, it's pretty low. And what you realize, what is the most important, it's the mind that will make you and hope and help you go through those hard times. So when you age, you have all that time to work on your mind and all that time to be better at it. It's like a monk, as you age, mentally you are going to be better because you exercise your mind even more. So that's what happened with me throughout all that time in the Pacific. Mentally, I was doing great. I was in my own world. I didn't have any problem, never hit a wall. And physically, swimming, it's not hard. It's not tackling on your body. It's not like running, for example, where you are going to have very high impact on your knees and articulation and so on. Swimming, no, I never had any problem with swimming.
It's a relief to hear because I'm 51. So, so to know that actually it gets easier over time, and that it's never too late to push yourself, feels great. But it's really just a matter of getting older, or were there certain things you did in anticipation, knowing that it had been such an obstacle for you the first time around?
Well, what was very important is that I had that experience in the Atlantic. So I knew what I was going to face. And I knew not what to do and the mindset I needed to be in. And then after, for the 20 years that lapsed, I never stopped training. I was always very active, always swimming. So I didn't start at zero when I was 50 and said, okay, next year I'm going to swim again, so I need to train over. So I never stopped being active, and I always do the same type of exercise throughout my day.
Which is what, like when you're building up toward one of these endurance swims, what kind of training is involved? I mean, how many hours are you in the water every day, and what other kinds of activities are you doing outside of the pool?
Yeah, you don't have to be in the pool. I try even to be less in the pool as possible because I don't want to lose the pleasure that I have of swimming. So I want to keep that fresh, and I try to not be in the pool either because I don't like swimming in the pool. When I swim, usually it's open waters, river or lakes,
Okay.
or ocean. But I do other activities, bicycling or running or everything that will work my endurance. And that's for the physical thing. And for the mental thing,
But wait, before we get to the mental, so I mean, because again, you're in the water hours and hours a day. So how much running and biking are you doing to prepare for this?
so for the last 20 years before, I was having, a regular schedule of training, maybe 1, 2 hours, or sometimes 3 hours per day, but 5 to 6 days a week. And when it got closer, then I was ranking up to 3, 4. 5 hours maybe in the last month or 2 months. But the real training starts when you leave the beach and you are going for the other side.
So let's talk about this, what you call the vortex swim. And that's what you were alluding to when you got back in the water after the journey had stopped in the Pacific. It was a little shy of 400 miles that you swam in what's known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's the highest concentration of human-made discarded plastic in the world. And to give a sense as to the scale of this plastic wasteland in the middle of the ocean, it's more than twice the size of the state of Texas, which is just unfathomable. What kind of plastic waste did you see when you were swimming through it?
Well, when we talk about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, people have the wrong idea. They think it's a big floating island that you can walk on, or it would be easy for a boat and people to get there and to remove it from the ocean. It's not that at all. It's an area when you have high concentration of debris and high concentration of microplastics. So you see much more, debris like bottles and plastic caps and so on. But you have a high concentration of microplastic that you don't really see from a boat unless you have very good condition, with it not much wave, and then the right light also from the sun in order for the light to bounce back from those little particles that are in the water. So, but when you are in the water swimming and you are looking down through the water column, that's where you can see that it's a very high concentration. So in that moment that where we hit the hard part, the highest concentration and concentrated area, for me it was like looking at the sky at night during a snowstorm. All those flakes coming down, it was exactly what I was seeing below me when I was looking down into the water. So you have little particles of plastic every few inches apart all around me.
Yeah, I hadn't been familiar with this term microplastics until I read about it on your journey. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so a microplastic is a piece of plastic that is 5 millimeter in size or less. Because plastic are going to break down, usually by the effect of the sun, and everything will ultimately turn into microplastic.
Along this swim, you would actually cut open some fish and you would find plastic inside the fish, which is just terrifying to think about. So, other than becoming a vegan, how does one protect oneself? Because I assume even the tiny fish are eating the microplastics.
Yeah, so the rule of thumb is to try, if you want to eat fish, is to eat the smallest fish possible, because the concentration on toxics and the concentration on plastic, it's going to increase as you go up the food chain. Because like you said, you find plastic in the little fish, we find plastic in the big fish, but the big fish eat the little fish, and everything that is chemical related, it's not being rejected by the fish, is going to concentrate as it go up the food chain. So one of the protocol that we have to do is every time we're catching a fish is to open the gut to see what we find inside the gut. So yeah, we found plastic inside the gut. And also we had to cut a piece of flesh and freeze it for analysis on microfibers and for analysis on toxicology also, to find out what type of chemicals I found in the fish, because that's a big concern that sometimes it's not healthy. It's dangerous to eat big fish, big predator like a tuna fish, because they will have the most concentration in some of the harmful chemicals.
So I'm going to ask the dumb question here in hopes that if I'm ignorant, others might be as well. How the heck does all this plastic end up in the oceans? I mean, we're dumping, I think I read 8 million tons of plastic into the ocean every year. What's the source?
Yeah, it's not a dumb question, because it's a question that everybody has. The problem with the ocean is that it's out of sight. So we don't tend to care about much, and since we don't see it, it doesn't become a big problem that we want to tackle. Most of it, 80% of it, comes from water runoff. So they have done studies about the amount of plastic that goes through the rivers and enter the ocean this way, and 80% of the plastic found in the ocean is just from runoff. It doesn't matter if you live by a river or if you live by the coast. Whatever we are doing in the middle of the country, even, it's going to end up in the ocean just because of gravity and of water runoff. You leave a piece of plastic outside, it's going to be rainy, it's going to go into the gutter, and then goes into a river, and then it's going to end up in the ocean. That's the cycle. So that's what happened. About 80% of the plastic found generate and starts from the bad habit that we have on land. But also we found a lot of fishing gears, big ghost net. And that's, again, it's a bad habit, and people finding easier to just dump the net that they don't want and tie them together and put them overboard, because it's cheaper to do it that way rather than to discard of them on land.
So I know this is really important to you. I guess the question is why? Why did you subject yourself to this? Why did this become an important cause to you?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I never stopped practicing, never stopped swimming, and every time I had the chance to do that in an ocean and traveling, I was doing that. And throughout the years, I've seen a big difference. I remember being a little kid when my father taught me how to swim in France, in the Atlantic side. And like little kid, you play on the beach, you build your castle, and you do all that. I never found any plastic. I never found anything like the beach that I find right now with my kids when we go anywhere, in Europe, in Asia, in the US. When you play, you see plastic everywhere. So throughout those 20 years, I had seen the increase in the amount of plastic on the beach, but also in the water, and less sea life. Going back to the place I had been in the past, I found less sea life and more plastic. And that became very a concern to me, because for the first big expedition I did it for my father, or in memory of my father. But then now I am a father, and what can I do, and how can I use what I love to do in the environment that I love for my kids? It became very easy for me to use what I love to do to bring attention to a problem that was growing, and a problem that my generation, and the generation before me created, a problem that we are going to pass on to the next generation, to my kids. So it wasn't difficult for me to feel very compelled to do something like that, to use my swim as a platform to bring the attention about the problem, and also to collect valuable data in the Pacific Ocean.
So what's the message, I guess, that you want to leave for us? I mean, how do we play our part in reducing all of this plastic waste?
Right. We are where we are right now, not because we screw up one time. It's a perpetuation of little screw up that we are all doing. And we are not going to revert that, because there is no silver bullet to the problem. The real solution, we have it in our hands. It's each one of us who have to do a part. We have to be cautious of what we buy. If there is an alternative to plastic, we should use that alternative. I don't think something that's the end of the world if we, for example, stop using plastic straws, if we stop using plastic bag when we go to the grocery store. So we have to change our habit with single-use plastic. That's one of the first steps. And then after, I think there is a lot to do in the plastic industry and big companies that use plastic, to use plastic that can only be recyclable. Because a lot of the plastic is not recyclable. A lot of it is a combination of different plastic or different chemicals, and you cannot recycle it. And so I think there is that will be helpful if you have laws put in place so that the only plastic that we produce can be recycled, and the type of plastic that we can recycle, and we can start to be in a circle, in a loop. We can use the plastic and recycle it, which we cannot do right now with most of the plastic, and we are very bad about recycling plastic too.
I'm really curious the underlying motivation that you have to take on these gargantuan endurance challenges. And I really admire that you're raising awareness for incredibly important issues like cancer research, environmental pollution. Ben, come on. I mean, there's surely easier ways to raise awareness than swimming thousands of miles across the ocean. So I assume there's a lot of this about what you're just wanting to do to push yourself and test your own boundaries, no?
Oh, yes, of course, it's a big part of it. And for me, I mean, there's two adventure or two expedition. One is the one that everybody sees, and the other is the one that I am doing. And what I mean by that is that through those expeditions, I discover myself too. I enjoy pushing my limit and discovering what I am made of, or when I'm going to break, or the thing that I have to improve or change, because you cannot really know your limit until you challenge your limit. And it's not by doing a routine work on land that I'm going to find those limits. And not to say that people should, push themselves and do that. No, but I know that for me, it's not enough in my life. I need to challenge myself in one way or another, even if it's that as crazy as that.
So what's the next adventure on the bucket list?
Well, there is other things right now, because of the situation, it's difficult to plan anything. But what becomes more important, it's less the size of the adventure and the expedition, and more the purpose behind it. And so I still want to go into areas where you think that you have pristine waters, and to do some sampling and find plastic and microplastic and microfibers. Also, it's a big thing, microfibers. We didn't talk about that, but just here to stop a little bit about microfibers being coming, most of it from our clothes. When we wash our clothing in a regular load of clothing, you can have 700,000 pieces of microfibers, and that is going to end up in the ocean also. The problem with microfibers is that it's everywhere in our life. The water that we drink has been tested. You find microfibers. We find microfibers in ourselves that's been tested also by our feces being tested. It's microfibers in us. And it's a very new subject, and we don't know exactly what are the problem that will be created in the future. We know that it affects some of our endocrine system, but we don't know to which extent yet. So it's a very new field right now, and we were collecting water sample to find the concentration of microfibers also in the water. So that's something I'm very interested into following as well, to try to get more data into pristine water to see how much microfiber we can find. Because one very important thing also to realize is that the plastic itself is the problem, but the problem is the property of the plastic. What I mean by that is the plastics, it's like a sponge with some of the chemicals. And when a fish is going to ingest the plastic, the chemicals that are attached to the plastic, it's much more a problem than the plastic itself. Right? And you can see that if you take, for example, a plastic container and you put a spaghetti in it, that sauce, it's going to stick on it pretty well. It's not by just rinsing around with some water, it's going to remove that the stickiness and all that sauce. So the plastic does that. It keeps on certain component, and a lot of it's chemicals, and it travels and get much more concentrated when you go up the food chain. So that's a big problem. And microfibers, it's something that we all ingest because we don't see it. It's 1/5 of the diameter of hair, human hair, And so, but it's found everywhere. But we don't know the consequences yet, or all of it.
Ben, the name of this podcast is The Art of Excellence. I always enjoy listening to how my guests define the word excellence. What does it mean to you?
I think it's like excellence for me. It's like beauty, it's in the eyes of the whoever is looking at a piece of art. And excellence is, it depends on whoever is going to be the judge of what excellence is. And it's not, for me, it's not a target, or if it's a target, it's a moving target. Because as you age and as you go through life, what you think was excellence at one time will change. It evolves. So for me, I wouldn't say that excellence it's a goal in itself. I think it's part of the process.
I like that. Ben, this has been absolutely riveting. I'm incredibly fascinated, as you can tell, by just these endurance swims that you've done. But I really admire you and respect you even more so for the work that you're putting in to try to raise our consciousness about an issue which unfortunately continues to get sidelined, and I wish it didn't. But I think people like you just keep pushing, and hopefully over time, the awareness will grow, and we'll take it to heart, and we'll do something meaningful about it. So thanks for doing that.
Well, and thank you. What is important, what I do, I love to do it, but it wouldn't be as important as I could make it if people like you weren't talking about it. Thank you very much for that opportunity and that platform, because without people like you, then, I wouldn't be useful at all.
Yep. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. Okay, don't go yet, please. 2 favors. I ask simply 2 favors. One, if you could please download the iTunes app. You could do it on your phone. You can do it on the computer. Take 60 seconds and leave a review. It means a lot. 2, you can find my episodes on several social media sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Find the one that you like the most. Find the one where you tend to have a lot of friends and followers. And if you could please either share it in the case of Facebook and LinkedIn, or retweet it on Twitter, that would mean the world to me. So those are the 2 asks I have. I love putting together this podcast. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Thank you so much, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.